gotten to this part of our day, being International Being You Day. I just want to say thank you to everybody in Rome who showed up with so much magic and launched us into this beautiful day. I want to give a shout out to everybody here in Mexico City live with me right now. Thank you guys for being here. What else is possible to explore today? So our first guests that are going to be joining me today are Miss Heather Nichols and Miss Kate Sarton. And we get to dive into chapter 8. What if you chose your parents? Can you imagine if that was actually a choice? And what did you know when you chose your parents? So welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Hi, Heather.
Are we? Hi, I think there's a little bit of a delay.
All right, there we go. And hello, Kate. Thank you for joining.
Hello. I was a different person for a second.
I know. That doesn't look like Kate. So I would love you guys, when you first heard this concept of what if you chose your parents, because I know a lot of us think that, we got stuck with them, or how do we not be them, or how do we be just like them, as if it was something that we didn't choose. So I'm curious, Heather, if you can jump in with me when you first heard about what if you chose your parents, what was that like for you?
Well, I think that the first place I actually considered it was with my own kids, and like, what if they chose me? And I was so relieved, actually. I was like, wow, okay. So if they chose me for me, who I actually am, then maybe all these things that I think are so bad about me as a mom, because, I don't love doing all the mom things that you're supposed to love doing, maybe they actually chose that too. Like, maybe it's not so wrong that I don't, have a different point of view about being a mom, and maybe it actually really works for my kids.
I would love for you to share a little bit about your different point of view about being a mom. I've had the pleasure of getting to create on parenting stuff with you, and both of you are such beautiful, unique mothers and beings in this world. So I know, Heather, like your journey is so different because you got to like this different vulnerability with being a mom. Would you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's been a ride. It has been a ride. My kids are 15 and 18 now. So my son just graduated from high school yesterday, my older one. And I started taking access consciousness classes when they were like maybe 2 and 5. So it's been a long journey. And I went to a class, I think it was actually my first class with Gary Douglas, who is the founder of Access. And I had this really extreme back pain going on, and I was a yoga teacher. I was really fit. I was really healthy, and so it was really bizarre because I had this ongoing back pain that wouldn't go away, wouldn't go away, wouldn't go away. Couldn't tie my shoes some days. It was really extreme. And I went to an advanced body class with him, and I asked him about it. My kids were actually with me, and I asked him about it, and he said, "Truth, do you hate being a mom?" And I was like, oh my gosh, there's 100 people in the room. My kids are in the room. And like, I know this man is psychic and I can't actually lie. And at that moment, I was like, yeah. And, but it was so cool because we got to the thing that I hated about being a mom was all the stuff that I thought that I had to do and all the ways that I thought I had to get it right. And everywhere that I couldn't be me as a mom because I had to get it right as a mom. And I hated that. That's what I hated. I loved my kids, but I hated having to be somebody that I wasn't, and I didn't like cooking, and I didn't like, doing all the laundry and all the, all the things that make you a good mom. I didn't like doing that stuff. And so Gary said, we did some clearings, and he said, hire somebody. And I did. And literally the next morning after this conversation and a body process that we ran in the class, the back pain was gone forever. It's totally gone. And it was like this sense of like, we say a lot when you have back pain, what are you hiding behind you? You know? And I was hiding that from me and from the world, like just how much I couldn't stand what I was doing. And that was the beginning of me really choosing something different and going, you know what, I got to do this my way. I've got to do this my way. And things have been so much different ever since. And I mean, I could tell millions of stories, but yeah.
Well, it's so interesting because the Being You Changing the World book, which by the way, if you haven't gone to beingyouchangingtheworld.com and got your copy, make sure you go do that. You can also download the first chapter, but shameless plug. But all through the book, it's about asking questions and about getting to what is actually true for you. And I know that especially with parenting, there's so much about what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do it, how your kids are supposed to show up, how you're supposed to support them if you're being a good mom and not a bad mom. And there's so many versions of that. And so I love that Gary asking you that question got you to what is actually true for you, because I have 4 kids. And I'm also a grandmother now. And I will say that I do not like being a mom, but I love being a mom. I love being me as a mom. Yeah. But I was avoiding like the mom thing for a really long time because I had to be in a constant state of judgment of myself. Yeah. So I love that freedom, that question, just one question, you guys, one question can change everything. So Miss Kate, also one of my favorite moms. I would love to hear from you what your daughter showed you when you were pregnant with her and how that changed your reality.
Yeah. And Heather, thank you so much for what you shared. That is such an amazing example of when you're not really being you, how it creates intensity, and it literally created intensity in your body. Like that is so primo. Thank you for that. And that my answer to your current question, Sarah, relates to how we started with this notion of like, what if we chose our parents? What if our kids chose us? And it's so funny because that idea, before having my daughter, I would have said, bullshit. I would have said, that's not possible. And, but then once I was pregnant and I was instantly aware of her massive, potent being and her invitation to me to have my back and her back and create a demand in creating my life that I hadn't been willing to step into yet. And it wasn't from the space of like, and now I have to give myself up because I'm going to become a mom. It wasn't any of those things. It was like, whoa, there is this whole new journey that is opening up in front of me. Am I going to step the fuck up, like for me and for her? And that experience, that moment was like, oh, she did choose me, right? Because there was something that she had to show me that she desired to invite me to. And she has continued to be that these 11 years. And then what's really cool about that is that acknowledgement then ripples back in time to me looking at my parents and being like, wow, if I chose them, what invitation have I been and do I be for them that I haven't acknowledged yet? What gift have they been for me that I haven't fully received yet? Because maybe I was too much in the story before of the parent-child dynamic or whatever that was. And it's such an unexpected place of potency to step into that and acknowledge that from both directions. And it's been such a cool gift.
Well, I love getting to witness you be a mom because it's like you guys are truly teammates. You're in such a way co-creating together always. And I know that you and I share stories often about what our kids invite us to. And we're like, we don't know who the parent is here, but we're so grateful that we have these potent beings who are willing to show us some things. So I love that. Heather, you and your son just co-facilitated a class together. And I know that at some point that probably seemed like that wasn't a possibility, or maybe the furthest away possibility. Do you want to talk a little bit about that journey and that arc?
Yeah. Well, um, how to break it down into a really concise story. Basically this is my younger one. He's 15, and a couple years ago he was just really um going very downhill. Like he was getting into drugs, and he was just doing a lot of risky stuff. And this was actually right before eighth grade, so he wasn't even in high school yet. And I just knew, I knew where he was going, having been a teenager myself. I knew where he was going, and I was not willing for him to go there. Um, and it's cool because a lot of the tools that we play with in access consciousness are really about like allowance and letting people see what their choices create. And there's so much about that in the parenting conversations. Um, and one of the things I learned from that moment was there's also a time where you just go, nope, like you're not going down that path, you're going over here. And that's basically what we did. Is we sent him to a wilderness therapy program, and then a residential therapeutic boarding school for eighth grade. He was gone for his whole eighth grade year, and it was such an intense time. It was a really tough decision. The hardest thing I've ever done as a parent, for sure. And but it was so beautiful what occurred, because we were very facilitated through the whole process, like as a family, and there was all this stuff that we got to really look at in our relationships with each other. And he and I, he came home. Actually, we were just talking about this last night. He came home from that exactly a year ago yesterday. And we were just kind of reflecting on the past year. Because he came home, and we were like, I was like, crazy mom. I was like totally hovering and like so afraid he was gonna relapse, and he and I really had to, like, we had done so much work when he was gone, but we had to do even more when he was home, and navigate, like, how are we going to do this? And it was so cool because the more I would let go and the more I would trust him and give him space to create his life, like the more relaxed he got, the more communicative he would be, the easier our relationship would be. Like it was like this huge expansion. And over the course of this past year, it's been also like, I love how you described Kate and her daughter, like kind of like really co-creating the whole parenting thing, and the call that we actually haven't done it yet. We postponed it, but it was called Parenting Your Teen and Teening Your Parent. And we do have a podcast that we did, that people can listen to, where we did it together. But because to me, it's like we really have gotten to this place where we're like, okay, let's look at this here. Like, let's talk about things like what worked for you and what works for you and what's true for you, and that's one of the questions that I think to have, whether you ask your kids that directly or not, but to have it as your curiosity as a parent. It's one of the things that has made parenting actually really fun for me now, is always being curious about what's true for my kids. Not what I want them to be, not what I think they should be, but like really seeing them as these unique creatures that have their own knowing and their own awareness. And like, if we've had lots of lifetimes, like, I'm not necessarily older than them, we're just in a different arrangement this time. And it's like, hey, what's true for this creature here, called my son, and it's not the same for both of them. And really looking at that and letting him show me how to parent him in a way that works for him, now that we've got a different foundation to work from. And it's been so beautiful and so magical. And he now, like, it's like every time I see him, he just gives me a huge hug. He tells me how much he loves me. Like, it's so different. And I'm so glad that we did what we did. And I'm so glad that we're where we are now. And it really has just been such a gift. But I would say the biggest piece is like really be looking at, who is this creature in front of me that I call my child, and what if they're not my child? What if they're like way bigger than that? I mean, yes, they're your child, but like, what if they're way bigger than that? And how can you facilitate them as a being? And for me, it's like, if my kids are being them and they're happy, truly happy, that's really all I care about.
I love that you talk about that is what actually brought the fun back to parenting, because I think where the world teaches us often is it's a hard job, and you have to give yourself up in order to do it, and you won't have your body, your free time, or any money if you have kids. There's like so many points of view out there, and I know, like for me, when I started to really get with the access tools to empower my kids to choose as my only job, I was free of a lot of stuff, because I finally could just be like, you know what, it's your choice, you create your life, and how do I have your back in that? And if there are no wrong choices, like a lot of the conversations that came today about wrongness, if our kids were never wrong and they were just making choices that gave them more awareness, like how do we celebrate that in a totally different way? Miss Kate, I would love for you to talk a little bit about like what access tools have you started to use with your daughter Phoenix, and how has parenting changed since you've been using the access tools?
Oh, well, it's so funny. As you two were just going back and forth, I was like, oh, right. What if parenting is hard because that's an indicator of you're not being you, right? Or not choosing for you and not co-creating. So I'm putting that in the memory banks, like, oh, okay, mental note. It's so interesting. So from the beginning, there was like lots of downloads and insight of being pregnant and having this daughter, and she was a surprise. So I was just like, whoa, okay, here we are. But I didn't have any of the access tools yet. I had lots of other tools. I'm a massage therapist. I had a stress management certification. I had all these other tools in my toolbox, but I was still trying really, really hard to get it right. And I didn't have the like spacious ease and fun that we share and have like on that adventure together now. I definitely had way more of the stress, and because I was overthinking everything from like making baby food to, whatever. And I was like trying to preventively control every surrounding, every environment around her to like keep her safe and organic and whatever.
I know not of which you speak.
I'm sure I'm the only one. And what's really funny is for an area of life where there is a abundance of how-to books and information out there, none of them can actually tell you what your child is going to be like and what they require, because each being, each body is completely unique. So maybe there's like one morsel of information from this book and like a nugget from this podcast or blog, but like they're just moments of information. So I was trying really hard to get it all right. And then I took my first bars class, and the Access Bars, which is for anyone who's brand new listening, it's an energetic modality, kind of the like a great starting point with access consciousness when like looking at body work. It helps declutter the mind, the mental space. I call it, it's like meditation, but you're just being gently touched on the head, and you get to get rid of the things that are no longer serving you, that are cluttering up your mind. So I took my first workshop because I was going to make it a part of my practice for massage. And I thought it was great. But the first wow moment with it was actually with my daughter. She's been an amazing kid and was always very easy as a baby, except for sleeping through the night. Like she would wake up every 2 hours and want to snuggle. And maybe we would have a few days where she slept through the night, but for like, I don't even know, the first 4 years of her life, like I did not sleep. And I remembered hearing the Access Bars that some people have reported better sleep afterwards. So she knew I had taken this workshop. She's always been an incredible talker and conversationalist. So I was like, hey, can I try this new thing that I learned? And she was like, okay. And so I ran all the bars points on her. We were in bed doing bedtime. She fell asleep as I was going through the points, but I had finished up the session on her, and she slept through the night, and she slept through the night from that day out. And I was like, no way. Like that undeniable moment of a light switch flip where no one could convince me or tell me otherwise, like logic something out. It was just this moment of like, oh, wow, there are definitely things possible here way beyond what my brain can figure out. So the bars was the first. And then I just use questions with her all the time. A lot of questions with bodies. Her body is sensitive and aware to some things. And I do my best. I'm sure I'm not perfect. I do my best to present it in a way of like, do you want to try this? Like, what if you try this thing? Instead of like, hey, this is how you this is how you do it. And it's really, really cool to see what she's interested with and what takes. And the last little story I'll share is that so her stomach can be kind of sensitive to some things. And so there was one day she was like sitting on the toilet with her stomach hurting. And I was like, hey, what if we give some energy to the earth? What if we throw some threes? And so we threw a couple threes, and she instantly started feeling better. And she looked at me and she was like, man, Mom, like, and I'm not going to do it verbatim, but she was basically like, I am so lucky to have you as a mom, because I bet not everyone knows this. And I was like, oh my God, if I had these type of tools growing up with my own body, which is incredibly sensitive and aware, like how much more ease I would have had along the way. So, it's just been so wonderful to have them and offer them to her for when they click, and then see where she gets to take that and run in her life in whatever way that shows up.
I love that. And I remember that story so much, and it melted my heart then as much as it did today. Heather, I have a question for you in regards to like your ask for the world in regards to parenting. Like, I know it's a big question getting out the gate here, but what do you know is possible if parents knew there was something else available? Can you speak to that future for me?
If I can do it without crying.
Yeah, me too. That's why I'm having you. You're welcome.
You know, before I knew that I could be me as a mom, you know, I mean, I told the story, like I hated it. You know, I did not hate my kids ever. I adore my children, but I hated living in the prison of judgment that parenting is for most people, you know, trying to get it right, needing to get it right, you know, there's like so much pressure. I always say like with parenting, you know, it's like the one area of life where like, if you mess it up, you like, you know, the conditioning is like, well, you mess up another person, you know, if you mess up your, you know, money situation, well, you're the only one that has to deal with it, you know, but that's the thing. That's why there's so much pressure, you know, on parents. And it's like, it's so much, and it's such a lie, you know. Earlier, I know there was a discussion about what's true for you makes you feel lighter. What's a lie for you makes you feel heavy. And parenting was so heavy for me because I was living such the lie of perfection, and, you know, that I could even get it right. So for me, it's like, I would love to see a world where people actually give up trying to get it right, trying to avoid getting it wrong, and truly know that what they know and what they desire and what they like, that their joy as a parent is actually one of the greatest gifts they can give to their kids, and that they're not wrong, and that their kids did choose them for them, not for who they are trying to be that they're not. And to have fun, like to really actually enjoy it. Because when I like the more I enjoy me, my life, everything I'm creating, it's like the happier my whole family is, and that is one of the things you're just not supposed to have as a parent. And man, if that would change, what an amazing world this would be.
Totally agree. And as we wrap here, I'd love to hear from you, Kate. We've got just a minute or so to go. I know that in this reality, parenting is often done from judgment, and it's just handed down and handed down. And I'd love to just hear from you, like, what is your ask to change with parenting?
Yeah, I might be echoing a lot of the same sentiment that Heather offered too. It's that piece of releasing the self-judgment, pivoting to looking at it as an adventure, and like knowing you always get to choose again. Sorry, I don't know if my video froze. Was my audio okay?
Very good.
Okay. But looking at it as an adventure, and that you always get to choose again. Like there isn't the final choice, or you make the choice and then that's it. Like it's such a dynamic movement. The fun also that Heather mentioned, we were laughing our asses off the other day because we were being so ridiculous playing with these little styrofoam balls that you use to fill up like a beanbag chair. We were filling up this thing and the balls were spilling and going everywhere, but there was magic because they were so filled with static cling that they were like clinging to us, and then we'd go and try and touch them and they'd move away. And it would like, it was so absurd. We probably looked like cats, like going to town and just laughing our butts off. And I had that moment of like, this is the joy of being together. And I know it doesn't always look like that. I'm frozen, sorry. I know it's not that every moment looks like that moment, but I get that those moments get so much greater and are so much easier to be with when we let go of the judgment, when we know that we can choose again and really approach it as being an adventure together.
I love that so much. And I'll just add here in the end, what if we could be for our kids who we always wished we had? I know that Dane and Gary always invite that energy. And I often parent from that place too, is like, if I were in this situation, what would I have wished an adult would have said to me or just been for me energetically? And so that's my invitation, all the parents out there, is who did you actually require for you when you were that age? And what if you could be that for your kids? What else is possible, you guys? Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so grateful to be here creating different possibilities for our kids on the planet, and so grateful for moms like you that are doing the same.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.